And we're here.
Hello.
Hello. And of course, we're making sure our camera is right because
Always.
the background is always not as leveled as we would like.
Well, we're never. Well, I just don't want it down enough for where my chest is showing. That's kind of
God
like,
forbid, Jen. Now, of course, we're at I think we're even now. Are we?
Yeah, no, we're fine
That
now.
looks good. Hopefully the microphone sounds okay.
Hi, all. Well,
Hi,
we're
all.
going to not be banging on the table, which we have come to realize is part of our clicking problem. But welcome, Wednesday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
And we're going to be talking with the Serfs.
At least one of them.
SERFS.
At least one of them. So we'll see.
And then we're going to be talking with a candidate that we've had on before.
Muad Herzi. Great people.
Muad.
Muad. Say Muad?
You kind of say it like it's Maud.
Muad. Maudlin?
Like A-M-A-U-D-E is how you sound it, and it's M-U-A-D, Muad.
The Vanguard boys mentioning us today in a good point about the fact that Tulsi wrapping her arms around Meghan McCain, even though Meghan McCain on The View called her an Assad apologist and a traitor and all these things. Yeah, that's what you call a soldier in the military.
Wait, the Vanguard guys brought this up?
Yeah.
The Vanguard guys mentioned us?
Yeah.
Because they're usually in the pocket of not us.
Well, I guess
against us.
No, I wouldn't even say that. I would say that they just like to talk about the gossip stuff. But the truth is,
they smack talkers.
It's really unfortunate that Tulsi Gabbard has really. I mean, again, it's like it's one thing if your principles are really conservative and they just come out and this is what you believe and all that. It's another thing entirely to just completely jump the shark regarding being on the Republican side.
Well, except for that presumes that she was ever really left in the first place. And so when someone switches like that.
No, but where's your integrity though?
Oh, no. There is no integrity. There's just people using talking points to promote themselves to different demographics. So if being progressive is what's selling at the time, then you can promote yourself that way. But I don't think anybody does that much of a 180. Like nobody does that much of a 180 in that short of a period of time.
Even if that's the case, where is your integrity? Like, where is it? How could you wrap your arms around? And this is all about the fact that Meghan McCain's book has been a colossal disaster. Hasn't sold, and even our friend of the show, Sean from the Actual Justice Warrior, he's on the conservative side, but he let Meghan have it too, and was like, what you're supposed to do is like buy up a whole bunch of these books and have them get distributed. They say like that's what happened with what's his name? With like when Ted Cruz or Bill O'Reilly would write a book, like they would buy a whole bunch of extra copies and they would store them in a warehouse and they wouldn't actually be sold. And they would say,
exactly, Chris, that's exactly where I was too. So it's like, well, I don't follow that anymore.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Well, again, what you have to remember is that drama sells. That's the other thing.
Yeah, this is why we were just talking about, first of all, it's funny because Guy, we just mentioned you. You are hands down our best supporter. So we appreciate that. We really appreciate it very much.
And since and while we're here, since we're gonna jump right in.
Yeah, guys, we really could use patrons because funding from YouTube is so suppressed. Like there's no there.
Declan, you owe us money. You should definitely
seriously, Declan, at least $5 a month. You know how much entertainment you've gotten from us over the past few months? Yeah. You sit here, you comment, we respond.
We don't kick you out.
Occasionally you get timed out. Don't be mean to my guests. But people throw $5 a month our way if you can.
We'd really appreciate it. As low as $5 a month, you can become a patron of our channel. And again, we do not take a salary.
Well, there's no money to take a salary. I hate when you say that because at some point it would be nice to get paid for what we do. However, right now, all of the money for this podcast goes into our Gen Core, which is a 501c4. And that money goes towards service. Local service, the occasional non-corporate candidate we'll donate to. We just donated to a nonpartisan candidate for our school board down here that we like very much, Sean Moreno Escobar. But for the most part, our money goes towards community work, whether it's supporting women's reproductive rights, whether it's supporting community garden. That's where the money from this show goes. So, look, if the money starts flowing in and we could take a salary, we'll readdress that at that time.
Anything you guys can do to help spread the word obviously means a lot. So with that said, Chris, absolutely agree.
And we do stay focused on issues. We will engage in a certain amount of banter and nonsense, but at the end of the day, the gist of our shows are long-form interviews that are issue-based.
Correct, 100%. And so I definitely agree, Chris. I do think that Tulsi is angling to run for president, but I think ultimately she's looking to be Ron DeSantis's VP. I think that and
I got to tell you, that's a formidable ticket.
Yeah, one former and current service man and woman on the ticket on the GOP.
It's formidable.
Yeah.
And the truth is, as much as I have grown to not like or trust Tulsi, she's good at what she does in terms of selling her stuff.
Alex, here's a great point, and we will discuss this with the Serfs. All you hear from the Democratic operatives led by the likes of Paul Begala and
he was a bootlicker of ours once. Begala was a bootlicker of ours. So whenever I hear that name, I'm like, bootlicker.
Actually, you know what? This will be perfect because our guest has arrived. So we are.
Are these guests cannabis participants?
Oh, they better be.
Well, they're probably not anti-cannabis.
No, I highly doubt that. But we.
He looks way too young to be anti-cannabis.
Well, we'll find out, sure, soon enough, won't we? But for those of you who like really good content on YouTube and social media in general, we always like to cross-pollinate, as Jen says.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great opportunity to continue the conversation with other like-minded people or even people we disagree with. But in this case, we are having a guest that is very much on the progressive side of politics.
We don't always do that. Like, we do not like to be an echo chamber. Every once in a while it is fun, but we kind of spread it out.
I believe this is Lance. I could be wrong. Is it Lance?
Yes.
I got the right one. Lance from the Serfs, welcome to Generational Change.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm very pro cannabis. I don't know if you know this though. As a Canadian, I can't actually say on a stream that I've ever tried it in my life because when I go to the border and cross it, they can check my social media, and if they've seen that I've done it once, they can refuse me entry to the U.S. So that's a because
it is considered a Schedule I narcotic in the United States.
Well, we're working on that. We're working on that, Lance, so you can wear it loud and proud and come over the border.
So, of course, the perfect place to start, obviously, we saw what happened earlier. Joe Manchin, of course, is not going to vote to codify Roe v. Wade. What a surprise. But the one thing that we noticed, which is probably not too surprising, is the fact that we don't see Paul Begala or Jennifer Rubin or any of those rubes that are out there, no pun intended, saying, man alive, how those terrible, terrible Joe Manchin voters didn't vote for Paula Jean Swearengin when they had the chance. Because Lord knows if she was in the Senate, it would be codified right now. So I guess it only applies to Bernie voters. Is that correct, Lance?
Can you tell me what Joe Manchin said today? Because I saw that press conference or something where he was being interviewed and he's kind of like danced around the subject. But
yeah, he's essentially saying that there's as a lot of the kicking the can down the road types like to do is they say, I'm open to codifying Roe v. Wade, but this particular form of what you're the type of proposal you're putting forward goes too far. So that's what he's saying. And Lord knows what the hell that is because there is no description in terms of what that actually means. So in this instance, he's saying, I'm willing to do it, but you haven't wet my palate enough yet for me to do it.
We have to lure you to agree with the majority of the country.
Good stuff. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Him and Sinema, they're the two holdouts for abolishing the filibuster as of now.
Yeah.
And the only two.
But let's be very clear. No one's trying very hard. Okay. Yeah. Like you can blame someone for holding out, but if you're not really being on it and fighting for it, that's kind of weak.
Yeah. I mean, my quick answer would be that like I find Republicans are a lot better at controlling their party. So in the event of the Manchinima problem that seems to be a constant theme in the United States right now, I don't understand why you'll see people like the President Joe Biden go in front of a camera and afterwards be like, oh, but I'm very fond of Kirsten Sinema and all the work she's done. Like you would see Republicans hounding anyone who stepped out of line of the party, especially if they were the two holdout votes that they were looking for on a regular basis. And I don't want to bring up like they're better with the whip or anything like that, but at the end of the day, it's pretty telling interesting that you don't have a majority of Democrats coming out in front of a camera and being like, this person is an obstructionist. They're holding back, very important legislation time and time again, whether it was that $15 minimum wage federal increase that was attached to the original Build Back Better bill, all the way up to like holding back the Build Back Better bill and getting it repeatedly because of Manchin's deep ties to the oil industry, the coal industry. I don't want to mix this up. Yeah, it's utterly absurd. I mean, I'll give credit to people like Sanders, who at least would go in front of a camera when he had the opportunity and say, well, by the way, these are basically right-wing Republican Democrats that are holding us back, kind of thing. But it's an abysmal affair.
We think that they're just sort of the assigned baddies. Like, that's who it is now. If they weren't there, I assure you there would be two other people that would be in that position. Because the reality is that the Democrats over the past, 4, 5 presidential administrations haven't really been doing anything about this. And I'm talking about the past 3 Democratic presidential administrations where they've had majorities. And
Obama had a supermajority. So
exactly.
What's the excuse there? He had that as a campaign promise, if I remember, saying that he was going to codify Roe v. Wade into law. And then all of a sudden, once he assumed power, it's like, well, that's not really a priority for the Democrats right now.
Right out of the box. Right out of the box.
It kind of should be
a majority, and he couldn't even get us a public option. So it's like, I think about that, and I think about presidents like Johnson, like LBJ. Can you imagine there being like a holdout on something he wanted to put through? And he's like, oh no, those guys, we're so tough, but we can't control a senator. They don't want to.
It is the rotating villain, as Chris would say, and that is a big problem that we face. But the thing that also doesn't get talked about, which I think should be talked about, is the fact that you do have 2 senators in the GOP who every once in a while seem to be agreeable on policy that just makes total sense. And that, of course, is Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. And so 2 of them in particular saying, I did not, under these pretenses, agree that we were going to overturn Roe v. Wade, because that's what the 3 conservative justices said in their confirmation hearings, that we were not going to overturn it. Well, if that's true, then why isn't President Biden, Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi raining holy hell and saying, Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski, get on board with us right now. Let's codify Roe v. Wade. If you really care about this issue, why not even attempt to do it and get McConnell to come out and say, oh, we're not doing any of that. At least get him to do that. But in this instance, he's not even doing that. I mean, what the hell? I mean, how much more do people have to watch this to say, are they playing a game? Are they playing tricks on us?
Well, I am curious about a young Canadian's perspective on this nonsense.
I'm not actually that young. I'm in my late 30s, but I have been around for a bit of time. I'll say this. I think Susan Collins is kind of busy right now of the terrorist attack that she recently had in front of her sidewalk with that shock. Absolutely deplorable. I'm glad that she was capable of calling the police to remain safe in her home. But no, it's like from an outsider's perspective. Well, I'll tell you this. In Canada, you're going to have a lot of liberal check marks on Twitter, and this was just disgusting to see, who are all going off about how amazing it is that we don't have to deal with this problem in Canada. Canada's this lovely utopia, and we'll never have to worry about that. Abortion in this country is just decriminalized, which means that obviously it's not a criminal activity if a doctor wants to provide it for a woman or a trans man or whoever else is seeking it. So that, like, at the same time, we have a massive problem with forced sterilization of Indigenous women. There was a lawsuit as recently as 2008 where about, I think, close to 50 to 100 women are suing the federal government for having experienced, forced sterilization. So it's been a massive problem for years in terms of not having reproductive rights for Indigenous people in Canada, for Black people in Canada, people in marginalized communities. Well, at the same time, they like to posture right now that, oh, we're so much better than the Americans because we do have complete access to abortion in this country. I mean, all that being said, my heart goes out to Americans, because it's such a rock and a hard place. It seems to be this position where it's like, well, you should do the responsible thing, and then you should mitigate the harm by voting for the party that's not actively trying to legislate against women's bodies, absolutely, or actively trying to legislate against the trans community, or trying to look at the genitals of trans kids, or any of that really fucked up shit that Republicans are doing on a regular basis. That is fucked up. That needs to be, like, sure, push it off. At the same time, the Democrats are woefully inept at actually putting forth the legislation or fighting for it, in the public eye, on camera, when you have the press, when you have the opportunity to get something done. At which point, like, I understand why there is a huge young voter demographic in the U.S. that is so jaded with the political process, because what does it look like to them, right?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because we talk about it in terms of their failure to codify row over the years. But there's another really big factor here, and I harp on it a lot, is the amount of Democrats that approved all of Trump's judicial appointments. And they've been doing this for years. You don't get to sit there and sign off on, very conservative, radical jurists and then act so surprised that this is happening. And the other factor is you have congressional leadership campaigning for anti-choice candidates like Henry Cuellar against that. Right. These are they call themselves pro-life. I call them anti-choice. We could call them forced birthers. I don't care. But it shouldn't be somebody that the leader of the Democratic Party who's claiming to care about this issue is down campaigning for an anti-choice Democrat.
Do you know what Cisneros' chances are right now outside of getting Pelosi's endorsement from Cuellar?
It's a coin flip because he's still under FBI investigation, and she's going to have she's got a lot of money. Yeah, that was funny, right?
Right.
She's got a lot of money, but this race is a very unique race because it really comes down to immigration. That's the issue, and I can tell that because of where the vote splits were during the initial primary. She cleaned up in San Antonio, but he cleaned up on all the border counties. So it's a very distinct race, and depending on how hard she's going to lean into that issue in a red wave year is probably going to determine whether or not she's able to get over the finish line. I think she's got a puncher's chance of doing it. I think also the fact that a lot of people I think they're doing a pretty good job of drawing attention to the race because of how hypocritical the party apparatus really is. But at the end of the day, it's got nothing to do with being pro-choice or being anti-choice. It has everything to do with whether or not you are bought and paid for by corporate special interests. Henry Cuellar is, Jessica Cisneros isn't, and that is where it ends. And the more we talk about that is the singular issue of our time in politics, is the sooner we'll get to the realization amongst even, normie voters that, maybe we shouldn't be supporting candidates that are funded by Raytheon and, Big Pharma and big oil and all those companies, because ultimately they are the ones who are determining how our legislative, branch operates on Capitol Hill. And until we get to that point, we're just going to continue spinning our wheels.
That's something I also wanted to ask, is that outside of, because I've seen progressive people do it, calling out, say, Nancy Pelosi for supporting this pro-life candidate who I believe is on the record of saying that he still would want it to come down to a woman's choice, but he is essentially pro-life as his own philosophy, right? He's a Catholic, and then he feels deeply about the sanctity of life begins at conception and all that weird stuff. So is there a push beyond progressives to call that out, to be like Nancy Pelosi? Why are you on one end saying that you actually care deeply and you should vote blue no matter who, and we got to fundraise off this issue because the Republicans are coming for reproductive rights, while at the same time I'm simultaneously supporting Cuellar over Cisneros?
We do, and I definitely have heard people that are consistently left and try to be, very consistent on their views have mentioned this. But in terms of people within the party structure, no one's saying anything. They're all falling in line on this. This they can fall in line on. They can't fall in line on supporting actual, help for people. But this one, they can just fall in line with her. And so, no, they don't call her out. And it's just gross. Our representative was just had a rally, a pro-choice rally. She loves to grandstand on this because it's an easy one and she could fundraise and 70% of the country agrees and, no risk. And she'll go out there and grandstand on this like it's some big thing. But yet I don't see her challenging Nancy Pelosi's support of a pro-life Democrat. I don't see her turning down approving far-right judges. People don't pay attention in the interim years, and then this comes up and they think these people are their champions. They're not your champions.
Oh. Can you give me some of the examples? I'm just curious, what are some of the Democrats who supported the appointment of Republican judges?
All of them. Nancy, and we just put it up. Our Chris said that he doesn't remember which year it was, but there was a year in particular where she fast-tracked, rubber stamped all of Trump's judges because they wanted to go on vacation early.
Yeah, that was in the summer of 2019.
So it's whoever would follow in line with Pelosi, whoever would get in line with her, they all signed. This was something that nobody paid attention to. It was all under. Yeah,
there was an initial movement to try to halt some of the, the federal appointed judges in certain states, and ultimately they were like, "Nah, we're just going to do it anyway." And that's the, there's this consensus that, basically the Democrats are paid to lose. They're not really making the effort that is necessary because on the one hand, we think that the best thing that's happened in politics during the Biden administration in terms of the movement was Chris Smalls leading the effort to unionize Amazon. And,
absolutely.
And so as a result of that, he has him at the White House while at the same time he's signing new contracts for Amazon. So it's like you're saying one thing and you're doing something completely different. And this is where people look at the duality that exists within politics, and they're tired of the lip service, as I know, we are, because we are desperately trying to stave off this, theocratic takeover, if you will, of our electoral system and frankly, our government as a whole. It's gotten to the point now where there is significant minority rule, and we're staring down the barrel of a gun of President DeSantis or President Trump in 2 years. I think it's not hyperbolic to say that. And, unless there is a massive non-corporate wave of a candidate that can rise up and either challenge Biden or is able to potentially break through in a primary in 24, we really are in a very precarious place right now. And a lot of it is just their doing. And there's so many things that the president could do to mitigate these problems or even, end them altogether. He's just not doing anything. And so at some point you have to say, is this deliberate? And I think it is.
What are some of the things Biden could do? I feel like I'm the one asking you a whole bunch of questions, but y'all are really tough.
We don't normally get interviewed. We're interviewing each other, so we're.
What could Biden be doing by executive order in general?
I don't know if he could do anything by executive order as far as what I've read. What I think he could be doing is making this a front and center thing where he comes in front of, like, he has unlimited press power. That's what I think Donald Trump utilized so very well, right? Like, he knows that I can get billions of dollars worth of free press anytime. Like, he had CNN filming chairs for what, like 25 minutes or something because they were waiting for him. So he has the power as the world's most famous, I guess, human right now to be able to say, hey, by the way, I want to talk about an issue. Boom, MSNBC, ABC, CNN, they're all going to listen to a proclamation that he makes. So I think he could go in front of cameras and start really trying to drive home that this is the state trying to force people to give birth against their will, something of that line, or to call out people who are being obstructionists within his own party. He could do that too, but the Democrats don't really do that. But outside of that, is there something he can be doing? Because I know they're going to be trying to push through the Women's Health and Reproductive Act again through the House and the Senate. It won't make it past the Senate, of course, because you won't have the more than 50 votes. But is there something else he can be doing?
I mean, I just think overall it's very clear that this isn't something that he really cares about. In fact, I bet you he secretly kind of appreciates all this going on. I don't think he cares. And when we were talking about judges, I recall him sitting on Obama's administration and them actually tolerating their appointment, just sitting there and not getting a hearing. And nobody was standing up that I saw and fighting for Merrick Garland to get a hearing. They weren't doing anything. So, there's a lot of things that he could have done up to this point. But now, if he really wanted to fight for this, he is the strongest voice in the country. Like, that is the biggest platform in the country. So I think that is the power. And that's what we always talk about, even with Congress people, isn't what they can necessarily do via policy, but what they can do via public opinion and how we can start, building up momentum for that. But when you're just completely they're so impotent and you have to wonder, is it by choice? I mean, I think it is. But yeah, they don't do anything. They're Mick resistance. They don't do anything.
And as far as what the president has the authority to do, if he chose to, despite what some people say, he does have the authority to cancel student debt. He does have that authority. He has the authority to decriminalize cannabis and effectively expunge all nonviolent drug offender records.
Both which would be enormously popular amongst voters, by the way.
Yes, he could have declared a national emergency and expanded Medicare to everyone for COVID. And then they would have to try to take it back, which wouldn't be an easy thing to do.
It is a very interesting caveat that is included in the Social Security Act that not a lot of people know about, but us flunkies.
So there's a lot of things. And so when you look at his capability, even regarding just healthcare and what he could be doing for healthcare, well, that would include women's health. And that would include because it isn't just a problem even of decriminalizing. Like you said, it's decriminalized in Canada. That doesn't mean people have fair and open access and that it's affordable. So if this was something that they really cared about, which was women's reproductive freedom, then they absolutely could be doing things for healthcare for women that would be going in another direction. Like, you have to sort of attack from every angle. There's all different parts where you could be helping, and they're doing none of it.
And then the most important one of all that he does have the authority to do is to implement the Defense Production Act. And there are multiple ways that you could utilize that if you wanted to. The most important, of course, is we need to move to a clean energy economy, a clean energy grid, if you will. If you were to employ the Defense Production Act, he could probably build out a reasonable clean energy grid within a 2-year window. It's not that, it's not that trepidatious to think, if we needed endless solar. I mean, listen, being in Florida, we have a lot of protected land. There is endless amount of territory that you could have solar fields. And that would be a huge thing for Florida. I don't want to get sidetracked, but we have an energy monopoly in the state. That's a whole other can of worms.
And DeSantis just vetoed the bill that we wanted him to veto. And no one wants to hear when he does something decent.
But the only reason, Lance, that this got to his desk is because 3 Democratic senators teamed up with the state Senate GOP to make sure this got to his desk and gave DeSantis an unnecessary political win. And he's going to run with this when he's
this was solar. This was a solar bill that
100%.
That benefits Floridians and incentivizes solar. And they got rid of it because the bill was written by NextEra Energy, and they don't want that. They don't want net metering. They don't want to have to compensate you if you don't use the energy that they're providing. And so they wanted to take that away. 3 Republicans actually didn't sign on. So then 3 Democrats said, yeah, we'll support that. And then DeSantis vetoed it, which is a good thing. And yet nobody would give him credit for that. They actually went out there, the Democrats, saying that the only reason he vetoed it is because they put so much pressure on him.
How about not voting for it in the first place to not give him any political momentum? He already has all of the momentum in the world. Why does he need more? So again, you get to the point where you're like, is this deliberate? Because I think it is. And so I think the argument for the progressive movement, and we don't even like calling it that anymore, but the non-corporate populist movement that we're, a part of and that we're fighting for is, well, I think it's safe to say if a President Sanders was in the White House, that a lot of these things would have been dealt with, at least in some capacity. As far as I'm concerned, maybe in a big way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think there would have been a large section of the progressive movement that would genuinely at this point hate Sanders because of the things that the president would be doing regardless, things related to the military industrial complex, the Pentagon budget, things like that. I think Sanders would still be signing off on that. I think that would be too high a thing for him to try to take on. But I think simultaneously, the things that he could have done through executive order, like you just said, forgiving student loan, or at least forgiving an amount, right? Wasn't 10,000 to 1 being thrown around during the election, which seems like an impossibility now. But the one related to pardoning all nonviolent drug offenders, that would have incredible ripple effects and be something that would be so substantial, especially to marginalized communities. And it is something that is shown to be popular. I think that's sometimes the left, and I mean this globally, has to pick battles that are going to be popular for everybody, that are winnable. And one of them is ending the drug war. It's something that most people have kind of come to their own understanding, unless they're very Puritan Christian, that this will have a net benefit to society, that we need to stop criminalizing people's personal behavior and consumption because it's leading to the worst possible outcomes. We have more dangerous drugs on the streets than ever before. It directly helps benefit, crime families, crime bosses, all that kind of stuff. So this is something that I think a lot of people could get behind.
Yeah, that, and there are 2,700 people currently incarcerated in federal facilities that would actually be set free, and their whole families and lives would be changed directly if Joe Biden were to, release them. And that's just federal. Obviously, he can't do that for states, but 2,700 people is a lot. That's a lot of people whose lives have been ruined that are incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses. So, I think that's massive. And he just sits there and does nothing. This is why it's hard when he says something like, oh, it's Joe Manchin's fault. Mm-hmm. Well, we all need to do what we can with what we have. And that's what we think. That's what I think about Bernie. He wouldn't have necessarily had any more success with legislation. But I do think that the first 100 days of a Sanders presidency would have seen a lot of these executive orders that would have directly changed people's lives. That I think. And yet here we sit with nothing.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the corporate stranglehold that is on our government is really the order of the day, as alluding to what we discussed earlier. And This is why we don't have the massive change that we need. And this is, again, why President Biden doesn't do anything. Because if he were to do anything, it would go completely in the face of the heavy, money hitters of the party that are completely juxtaposed to anything that is beneficial to workers, the labor movement. And that is the reckoning that I think a lot of people have to have regarding politics is you can't be, pro-corporate power and pro-labor power at the same time. The two things just don't coincide. And so I believe that the greatest opportunity that we have as a movement can really be behind labor. Although right now, after what we just went through, because we actually went to Cleveland to support Nina Turner. And
wow, nice. I was doing everything I could from Canada actually for that campaign.
Yeah, no, I mean, we went for the last weekend to canvass for Get Out the Vote.
Nice.
And yeah.
But unfortunately, she got thrown under the bus in more ways than one. And it really speaks to just how discombobulated the left is. And, we may not have the biggest channel, but part of the reason I think we don't is because we don't get mired down in the constant mudslinging that goes on back and forth with a lot of these channels. This constant.
You just brought on someone who always does though.
You do a good job of the show. I'll give you credit. Somebody's got to do the dirty work. But
we call people out when we think it's particularly relevant. But for the most part, we focus on issues, policies, experts, authors. Like for the most part, that's what our format is.
I would just say
you do real work is what you're saying.
Well,
you're not a dumpster fire like the rest of us.
No, I try. And here's the thing, because I have a journalism background, but I do not refer to myself as a journalist now. But as what my background is dictates that I know to bring on the people that do know.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily we'll bring on Jordan Cheriton or we'll bring on people that are experts and that are
fellow Canadian David Dole.
But just people that we know are really in tune. So we're not I'm not making any claims. I'm bringing on different people who actually have information. So I feel like I'm more of a journalist curator.
But we try to make it fun. And I would just say that within the confines of the movement, and this is where you were absolutely correct, Nina Turner is there's nothing to think about there. That is as clear as day. Support her. She absolutely is as good a voice as you're ever going to find in politics, much less the movement.
In electoral politics, there's no one like her.
Yeah, she's one of a kind. And listen, I have no doubt that there were mistakes made on her campaign for sure. But the fact that she really was left at the altar and no one, and I mean no one, gave up more to support Bernie Sanders than she did. I mean, she was somebody who the Clintons and the Democratic establishment saw as, somebody who was eventually going to become, maybe a senator in Ohio and that type of thing. But she recognized what was more important. And for that, loyalty, almost, especially in American politics, it really doesn't exist. It's or as you like to say, loyalty for hire.
You can't. And we're writing a book about this kind of stuff now, actually. And we're going to reference campaign things where we think that things went wrong. And there's definitely some loyalty confusion on the left in a lot of different directions that's causing a lot of losses. I
mean, I saw Nina break her back for so many candidates go to where their district is to help them campaign and get out the vote, and the work that she did on the stump, which was so amazing.
And then where were they?
And it's almost like we get to Cleveland and we're like, how are we the only people here? How is that possible?
Yeah.
I didn't understand at all. Why did the Justice Democrats come out with that weird excuse after the fact? After the election where they were all like, well, we're seeing a lot of big money being funneled from pro-Israeli groups and we have to pick and choose our battles and blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I was like, okay, an endorsement, first off, all it is that it could be as little as a tweet. You could just put out one tweet and be like, I endorse Nina Turner. That would be it. You don't have to campaign. You don't have to give up funds. I mean, if you want to, awesome. If you want to put in the time, great. But I don't understand why all of a sudden it was post the event is well, we didn't have a choice. We had to do this in order to protect ourselves. And I was like, that seemed very off to me.
It's cowardly. and it's spineless. Yeah. And the reason that I can say that is there was somebody who did endorse Nina Turner right from the get-go, and it is someone who is part of the leadership of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And she actually, Katie Porter, endorsed Nina before the Progressive Caucus ever even mentioned Shontel Brown. So there are people that are willing to put themselves out there for what is right.
Bernie.
Well, yeah, Bernie, but I'm just talking, we were talking about like squad people. And Bernie did come out and endorse Nina. It wasn't like he didn't pay attention to it, but there was when I'm in the campaign office and people want to take selfies with me and I'm sort of the most known person that's there for Nina Turner, that's not a good sign, people. Not a good sign. And that's how it was. I mean, while we were there, Keith Ellison came, I think Cornel West. Cornel West, but Cornel West to me is sort of outside of, he's non-political. I mean, he's involved.
The biggest, and this is something that you do on your show, which is very good and very important. You call out the hypocrisy of the cloud chasers led by you know who.
He wasn't there.
Well, no, he wasn't, but he was like, he was trolling the hell out of Nina. And it's like, how could you troll Nina? And if that's not enough.
Weeks before the election.
Yeah, of course, saying goodbye somebody. I mean, you have to be the lowest form of low to really just like go after somebody like that. But what, in my opinion, made it even worse from the standpoint of justifiably going after AOC, and there are times where going after her makes absolute sense.
Oh, 100%.
If you're going to endorse Nina Turner, not only should you not endorse her at the 11 o'clock hour where you have no opportunity to circle the wagons and really get people out there, she couldn't even be bothered to make one social media post about it. She sent out one fundraising email. She wouldn't post it on Instagram. Nina had to basically do it all on her own and couldn't do it on Twitter either. And you're talking about millions and millions of people. Now, in hindsight, how much of a difference it ultimately would have made, I can't really say. But I know this. If you have the amount of people in your arsenal that AOC has, which if we're talking about, look, she's got 13 million followers and all that, but how many super followers? Maybe 500,000, maybe something in that range. You're telling me that if she was really encouraging people to get involved in the race, that you couldn't have had an additional 1,000 to 1,500 phone and text bankers on the campaign. You could have potentially had maybe 50 to 100 people who might have made the trip to Cleveland.
That's exactly why they don't let her endorse. That's exactly why she doesn't do that.
So to me,
there was still more than a lot of the other people in the squad or the Justice Democrats. I mean, she was one of the only people the day before who even endorsed. I was flabbergasted by that. I was wondering to myself, what's the difference between this run and the last run? Because I felt with the last run, there was a push, there was a bigger push. And this one, it was basically, there was a handful of politicians. TYT, to their credit, did a huge push for Nina Turner. I think Cenk spent like $25,000 of his own money.
Yeah. But I think the difference is that now they have an incumbent. And that incumbent, while she's only been there for half a second, went out and joined the Congressional Progressive Caucus. So now they're working against somebody that's one of them. So in the special election, they didn't have that. And so I think that's a big part of it now. And they actually see, the corporate side sees Shontel as an ally because she is. Right? Mm-hmm.
You can say that again and again.
She's corporate whore.
But you know what? There is no there, as you like to say.
Yeah.
She's not. She already has multiple ethics violations. She's still the chair of the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, which is a clear violation of the bylaws. Yeah, we know laws don't actually apply when it comes to corporate power. But she also was somebody who didn't even have a ground game. There was nothing there. And how great Nina's ground game was, it's hard to say because we were there and it left a lot to be desired. But you know what? When everyone pulls back, when everyone leaves her in the dust, it's like, what the hell, man? Anytime that I was ever at a Bernie rally or any political rally that Nina was there, there was no one I looked more forward to hearing than her.
Oh, she's the best.
Oh, she's so captivating. Yeah, I managed to interview her the Sunday before the election, and I was one of those things where you get 25 minutes because obviously she's got to go onto this show and then go into that show and all this kind of stuff. But those 25 minutes, I was just like, what a speaker, what an incredible speaker. You have a way with words, and you can make almost every end of your sentence sound inspiring. That's certainly that's a gift. Well, I was going to say it was heartbreaking, except for, of course, her concession speech, which is one of the best concession speeches I've ever heard. How are you inspiring in your concession speech? Like you're getting me fired up. I've never had that before. Where I'm watching concession speech, I'm like, oh, I'm inspired now. This is wild, you know?
Yeah. Actually, we are working on starting a super PAC. It's going to be the anti-corporate PAC, and we're going to be. I'm just responding to one of the comments.
Yeah,
and our goal is going to be that for non-corporate people that are fighting against corporate interests to the extent like that Nina was, we're going to be like Batman. And we're going to come in and we're going to run our own campaign for that person. Super PACs don't work with a campaign. Campaign doesn't take money from us. We're running our whole own show. That could be a completely non-corporate candidate. We can do whatever we want with that money, and we will be very transparent where our money comes from to the T. So I have no problem, but you know what? We're calling it Fighting Fire with Fire. We're going to be the anti-corporate PAC. And you know what? I can live with that, because at the end of the day, and you say, but I'll know where my money's coming from, and I'll share where my money's coming from, and it will be morally acceptable to me. And really, that's all that matters.
And the big difference you have to remember is, and again, what Nina says is just because you're you're on the progressive side means you don't take a vow of poverty.
Right. Nina always says the progressive doesn't mean you've taken a vow of poverty. People are suspect, rightfully so, of PACs, and because super PACs don't have to disclose and they don't have to share where their money comes from. But what if we did? What if we did? We can. They choose not to because they take it from filthy people.
Janice, you said time and again, let you have 5 minutes in a room alone.
Oh, I'd love to have, yeah.
5 minutes in a room alone with Mark Cuban.
There's certain people that I know that would be willing to contribute to this. And our goal would be basically to counteract all the special interests. So if the Democratic PAC for Israel wants to be putting millions of dollars, I want to be able to combat that. I want to be able to go, so somebody needs to fight fire with fire. That's just where I'm at now.
The problem is that a lot of times these PACs get started and then they end up becoming cash cows for people, and again, that probably more than any other reason is, and again, not going to mention any names or any campaigns, but the grifting is really bad in progressive circles. Candidates who are progressive get taken advantage of. They get grifted horrifically bad.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing that I think that we've established since we've been involved in politics since 2019, is that what you see is what you get. We're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we give a damn. And it would be so much easier to just go that route and say, yeah, we're doing this because it's all about, the money.
Yeah, well, I will take billionaire money. If billionaires want to put their money behind non-corporate candidates, yay.
What about super PACs makes them so lucrative? If you were if the two of you made a super PAC, but you were obviously transparent and you were saying out loud, this thing is called Fight Fire with Fire, we're going to use this exclusively to promote progressive politicians and stuff like that. Why would a billionaire ever want to put money into that? How does that work? Yeah.
Jen is convinced she has superpowers.
I'm convinced I have superpowers. No, because we have seen that there are people with money. We had Joe Sandberg on our show. He is somebody that has a lot of money, and that's the kind of thing that he would get behind. So we've seen that there are very wealthy people that support the idea of, democracy and like people to be able to be represented. So it's not as many. It's not like, Jeff Bezos is going to be contributing in any way, but there's enough wealthy people that actually still support democracy. I've met them over the past few years. So it really, Mark Cuban would be a good one, but there really are people that see it as that the takeover of the system in general is a net negative. So it isn't necessarily that they would agree with me on everything, but if they agree with that corporations shouldn't be buying our politicians and they're willing to put their money behind people that will work for their constituents, then yes, I will take their money. And it's bizarre to me that people aren't grasping this concept. I guess they're so jaded, they don't trust that somebody would actually do that.
No, because unfortunately, and Lance, you brought it up, it's true. Justice Democrats did start out as an organization that seemed to really be on the right path, but they have completely lost their way. And that is emblematic of the fact that there are way too many people who do get into this with financial aspirations. Not that you shouldn't be able to make a living, but ultimately, there are people that will start a PAC and they'll end up giving themselves like, 25, 30,000 a month salaries. So that's where the real problem lies in many ways. And if they're not actually working on behalf of the candidates that are not taking corporate special interest money, again, you could be a very wealthy person, but your interests are not with that of, let's say, Amazon or with Walmart or with Raytheon or Boeing or Lockheed Martin. That to me is what it's about. Stop. Don't even bother.
So frustrating.
Don't bother. There's always going to be people you can't agree with. Lance, could you please tell Jen that there's going to be plenty of trolls anytime?
Well, I was actually going to bring up that someone in your chat said fight fire with water, and I guess that is true.
Yeah, that's true too. But the point is what we've been doing isn't working, and unfortunately, most people can't raise enough small dollar donations to actually fight the corporate interest. Bernie did it, and there were certain people, Alex did it, but it's definitely the outlier.
There's also something to be said for certain candidates who are running for office and don't exactly have, there's almost like an it factor that people have to feel when they are getting the support of a candidate. And I got to be honest, I don't 100% agree with the idea of a super PAC. I don't. I'm just telling you where I stand. And I think that there is also
well, I was just going to say, if people like, you're saying are willing to put in vast amounts of money into something that they believe in politically, and the only thing holding them back is the existence of a super PAC that they could trust in, then I don't see why you wouldn't. If that is actually, I didn't even know that was something that would be on the table. I assumed most super PACs and giant donors come, again, from, in America, at least large corporate donors and either corporations or something to that effect.
Well, I do think that, again, people are also recognizing that the system is kind of cratering in a lot of ways at this point, and that's a huge problem. So when workers can't make enough to live, like how much worse do you think it can possibly get before people really start doing things that are much more irrational? Like everyone is up in arms right now that you have citizens going to the house of a Supreme Court justice and telling him not to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they're literally acting like it's the end of the world, like something terrible.
Peacefully, we should add.
Yeah, peacefully. What if it isn't peacefully? Like, do people not understand that you can only push people so far for so long before they're like, the hell with it, I got nothing to lose anymore. That's where we're heading right now. And our elected officials, our government doesn't want to do anything to help us. Nothing. Like for us, we're like on an island and people are wondering, why would we suggest doing something like this? Ultimately, it's because what else is there? And there's also a lot of people who end up running for office that can't garner enough support. They don't have that it factor, as I was saying, and their ability to raise money just isn't there. But maybe it would be more effective if they, we neglect, especially on the left, especially in this country, we totally neglect down ballot nonpartisan races. School board, city council, county commission.
Oh yeah, small local politics. That is exactly what people need to focus on more. It genuinely will impact your lives in ways that like the much more sexy, presidential elections will not, because that's actually what's going to happen in your like municipal elections, especially. I've had a problem my whole life in politics, trying to get people invested in local politics, because obviously it's something that everyone's like, well, I don't know who my comptroller is. I don't care. I don't know who my school board trustee is. It's not important to me. Well, it should be, because in a lot of ways you probably don't know this, but they will actually impact your day-to-day lives in a variety of different like methods in ways that you can't assume until you've seen it happen. And I've seen fantastic changes happen in local elections where very far left candidates, you can even look to in the US like Shama Sawant, right? Independent. Yes, socialist. Look who brought in the $15 minimum wage. Look who brought in rent freezing. Look who was apparently such a big danger to people's lives in the real estate industry that they had a recall election for her to try and get her ousted. But there you have an actual leftist, a self-proclaimed socialist who is running in politics and making real tangible changes to people's material lives.
Yeah, I agree. We talk about local politics all the time here.
And
Get a
unfortunately,
whole bunch of more Shamasawants is what I'm saying. You need
Well,
like 10,000 of them all across America.
yeah, I mean, and that's something that we would like to be helping more people doing, but unfortunately people just get so focused on the big name races, and they get very focused. I mean, most people don't even know when their municipal elections are. We can barely get voter participation in general elections, and so it's really it's unfortunate. And everyone just wants to vote for president.
That's a really good point, Chris. One of the other problems that we really have is there are really good candidates that could probably run very strong populist races in red states and don't take any corporate special interest money. And they don't get any money because, again, we have a huge problem with how the party apparatus is funded, especially the DNC and the DCCC. So people are looking for alternatives. And while I understand people's desire to look at something like the People's Party or the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, whatever, just know that it is very difficult to do this because there's opportunism everywhere and people fall for it constantly. We saw what happened with the People's Party recently. We have been very adamant about—
Not a fan. Lance, not a fan.
No, for a variety of reasons, and not even the corruption or the scandals, but yeah, I don't know that, like, I'm not opposed to the idea of running independents or the idea of running third party candidates if they are capable and viable of winning in an election. Then obviously, like, Shamaswant is an independent, for example. That's a good example of that, running and working. But overall, if you're like, well, I'm going to create a tangible alternative to the Democratic and the Republican Party that's going to win the presidency, unfortunately, no, you're not. That is a pipe dream. You live in a duopoly. You have to accept that. So you need to be able to get someone like Bernie Sanders, for example, who's going to be able to get to that level and galvanize enough people to actually almost get him into the presidency.
But it seems like right now the movement is kind of completely discombobulated. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say that's a fair assessment. I would say that's a fair assessment, not just in America, but globally, because I follow a lot of global politics, and leftist movements in a lot of places are disjointed. I think America has kind of been fractured ever since 2016, and then it got even more fractured with Force the Vote, which unfortunately drove more wedges between all the different what you could call leftist or progressive players, and now everyone is kind of finding themselves in all these strange, bizarre new camps. What I think, and personally for me, what inspires me in terms of American leftist movement is there is still a growing push for unionization. So the fact that we see over 50 Starbucks unionizing, and we got one in Canada too that is unionized as well. Canada, also in Ontario, 15,000 carpenters have just walked off the jobs to start striking and unionizing. We have seen the first Amazon union ever, something that everyone said would be impossible years ago. That has happened. That has taken place. That is to me, in terms of like workers' movement, something that is actually looks to be catching fire and something that people should run on. And if you are a politician, you should be backing it. It should be something forefront, saying that workers' rights are people's rights. These are important things. We need to be fighting for that. That is what, in terms of the US, I find very inspiring right now, because the Starbucks unions, boy, they're just popping up. It's becoming such a thing that Howard Schultz is having to do like Zoom conferences where he's like, I will promise to give every non-unionized worker $15 an hour, all of a sudden out of nowhere. Like, okay, well, that shows you the power that these unions have. For the first time, the CEO of the company is coming out saying to people, I'm going to give you what you wanted before. Are you talking about a livable wage? Are you talking about more rights? Are you talking about like better working conditions? Okay, you have it. Just don't join a union. Whatever you do, don't join a union. But I'll give you everything you want. Well, doesn't that show you the power of unions and unionization and what it's doing to someone that powerful? Who, again, the vast majority of Starbucks are not unionized. 50 is a huge number, but it's not the vast majority. But that alone is enough to scare the shit out of him. That to me is inspiring. That to me is like, holy hell, this is awesome. You can see it right in their eyes when they do these Zoom calls, and they just fumble all over each other. And so that's something that I think a lot of people need to be pushing towards, because it's addictive. Like the younger generation, they are very lefty. The TikTokers, they are very lefty, right? And all of them, they get inspired by this shit. So you will see, I don't know if I can swear, sorry, but you will see them
dropping F-bombs way earlier, buddy.
Okay, sorry. I never know. Sometimes I go on shows and I'm like, oh, please.
It's okay, we're good.
But yeah, that's what I see, and that stuff is it's addictive. It's inspiring. It makes more people want to talk about it, and it makes more people talk about it in the workplace. Like I have normies who are friends of mine who have suddenly started saying like, I never thought about this, but I'm talking to my coworkers about like our workers' rights, and they had never thought about it either, and now we're talking about it in the workplace. That's important. Like people never used to, it was a big taboo post Reagan, post Thatcher, all this stuff, to be able to have these kind of talks and discussions. It was like, oh, you don't mention your salary, you don't mention your overtime, like we leave that stuff alone. No, that is important. What you should be doing right now is worker power. You should be galvanized, and you should be getting solidarity in that respect. So that would be both my, yes, things are very fractured, but also there's inspiration, hope in that arena.
The big difference between Howard Schultz and Jeff Bezos is Jeff Bezos knows to keep his mouth shut. Yeah. Every time Howard Schultz opens his mouth, another union forms in Starbucks.
It's glorious.
Yes.
Tommy, nothing in the universe makes me change my position on Medicare for all. That's not what we're talking about here. Yeah. That's not happening. And I wouldn't support the candidates that we support are candidates that are non-corporate. And also there's other factors. I mean, but no, I am not changing my position on that. There's no money in the world that's going to make me change my position on that. But what we're talking about is electing non-corporate people. And we're not that's really our baseline. If you're representing your constituents, whether they're conservative or progressive, then you're doing your job. And if you're not backed by corporations, then you have to be doing that, or you can't keep getting elected.
You either have a principled position about how this is done, or you don't. The second it isn't done, and then that's the end. And so I think as long as it stays that way, that's what it is. You make your pitch. If people want to be involved, great. If they don't, then they don't. Our interest is strictly on taking down the corporate stranglehold on our government, and that's it. So with that said, I agree with you 100%. The movement really is going to come down to whether or not we can cultivate enough people through labor. I think, again, as we talked about from the beginning, what Chris Smalls did is it's no pun intended, generational in many ways. That is the way forward. And I think the more people really hone that message, that the environmental movement and the labor movement together is really the future of what we're going to be able to accomplish. Electoral politics is still important, but it's not the end all be all. While I was going to say that's usually what I try to impart the most on my show as well, is that, like, yes, if you find a candidate, again, that is inspiring to you, that is like an actual, like they're a full-blooded like socialist or something, they're going to be putting in all these kind of changes, you want to spend your time, money, and effort to back them, which is like I did in last Canadian election cycle for a lot of Indigenous candidates, then do that. Get out there and do that. But also, there are so many other facets. Like the day Bernie Sanders got elected as president, that should not have been the end of activism, especially lefty activism, right? Like there's still, you have to push for worker cooperatives, you have to push for unionization, you have to push for people doing mutual aid, building the community fridges to help people who don't have food security, all that kind of stuff. Like and direct action, obviously, right now of all times, getting out on the streets to fight for reproductive rights, things like that. That it has to be one of the many tools on the Batman tool set that you use.
Yeah, first I have to ask you, where in Canada are you?
Vancouver, right beside Seattle.
Oh, yeah, my mother-in-law lives there, which is why we don't ever go there. But I actually do love it there. No, let me tell you, I actually really like it there. And in fact, I won't even go to Seattle until after they're no longer with us because it's just too close. But
you're so morbid.
I am morbid. But look, none of us is getting out of here alive. But the other issue is we're going to need to talk about your dog for a second, because I've been admiring, is that a he or a she?
It's a he.
We've been admiring him. He had a little energy briefly, and now he's apparently sleepy. Someone in the chat mentioned something about the pup. So
that's little Chico. He's like coiled up like a croissant right now, but he's adopted from Mexico.
Oh, but he's not little.
I mean, he's little. He's like 55 pounds. He's a small.
That's not little.
Oh, really?
Well,
I don't know. I'm used to like people who say they have big dogs of having like big dogs like St. Bernards or those kind, like the giant ones.
Okay, my dog was 14 pounds.
So. Oh, okay. So that's little. Yeah, that's head size. Yeah, that's a pocket size dog. He's great. I mean, like any adopted dog, they have a lot of abandonment issues. So I'm just I'll put it out there. If you want to adopt a dog, I would say maybe have some experience, either like make it your second dog or just be prepared, because there's probably going to be a lot of like they follow you around the house everywhere kind of situation. But it's like, no, I love him. He's super cute. No big issues. I don't know what breed he is though. American Village Dog is what I'm told, which is the most common breed in the world. It's what like 67% of breeds are or something.
He has the coloring of a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Yes, we've heard Ridgeback.
What?
Like I would know that.
I would know that.
I've heard a lot of people say that. They've said like Vizsla, Ridgeback, a little Chihuahua, just because his ears are enormous and cartoony.
Okay, but the thought of a Rhodesian Ridgeback having coitus with a Chihuahua seems extremely painful to me.
Despite her lowbrow humor every once in a while, we hope if Jen ends up somehow running for office again, you'll help promote us.
Yes. Oh no, absolutely. Hey, my door is always open to help lefty politicians trying to get in to any form of office, because I think that is crucial. I am on board with your strategy as an outsider. I mean, I've canvassed for American politicians because I've wanted them to win. I've canvassed for politicians in Britain, for example, because I wanted to win. I made an app because I couldn't donate to Bernie Sanders' campaign, so we made a little app called Bernie Sanders to try and fundraise money that way outside. But like, I think leftism is an international movement. I'm really on board with Michael Brooks' analysis of that, and I want people in America to have that. I want people in America to have that stuff, because I think everyone collectively will live better. You are the superpower, hegemonic, controller of the planet right now. So it is better if there is a stronger leftist movement in America, and there is better like quality of life for Americans. And I say that as a Canadian because I want that to happen globally, kind of thing. So I mean, if you're
and if we could replace Debbie Wasserman Schultz with this lady, I would think that would be an upgrade of massive upgrades if there ever was. So before you go, what is Chico's Instagram so everybody knows if they're not already following?
Oh my God, Chico does have an Instagram. I think it's Will Work for Food. Let me find out.
I like that. Will Work for Food.
Maybe Will Work for Food _ or maybe double underscore. Let me check. Oh man, my partner's gonna be so upset. She's like, you had a chance to plug his Instagram and you didn't.
How long have you had Chico?
I've had Chico for just about a year now.
So it's fairly new. He's fairly new there.
Yeah, he's fairly new. I've had other dogs in my life. Like I grew up with dogs as a kid, but this is the first time I had a dog where he was like, when he went outside, he would be so reactive. And for non-dog owners, that just means he barks at everybody. And naturally, your instinct is to say like, you want to scold him, right? You're like, oh, stop it, like blah blah blah. But they're actually doing that for out of fear. So that's something I learned, is that he's actually scared. That's why he's doing what he's doing. It's Will Work for Snacks __.
Will Work for Snacks.
Yeah, it's Will Work for Snacks. Will Work for Snacks _ There you go. If you want to follow Chico's many exploits, it's Will Work for Snacks _ That's the Instagram handle.
Sure, we're gonna have to follow that.
If you want to follow a very cute pooch, this is definitely something you should do. Lance, we really appreciate it. Appreciate all the work that you do. Again, it is very necessary. Even if we can't have unity, let's have some solidarity. A lot of these channels, a lot of the things that we're trying to do, if we really made a collective effort to try to work together, especially on most of the issues that we agree on, I think we could get really far. A lot of this movement is really kind of, decimated in many ways right now, but we really make a conscious effort to try to have these conversations, because we all should be familiar with one another. And it's a lot harder to not like people when you actually know them. I think that's also something that a lot of people avoid doing. So we're very grateful that you came on. If you ever want to have us on or have another conversation again down the road, let's do it and keep
I mean, in all honesty, we do it there's a couple of reasons. One, we want to promote the show. All right, that's it. And when you bring on someone else who brings their viewers, it's a good move. But really, the point is, when we get more viewers, that means more people are getting a well-rounded message from all different sources. And I just think that makes them richer in terms of information. So that's what I think is, and that's like my spider web. I think of it like a spider web, and the more connections we make, the stronger that we are. So that's sort of.
And also the right does that really well, by the way. Dave Rubin will have on Joe Rogan, who will have on so-and-so, who will have on so-and-so. And so they've cross-pollinated all together.
All right, I want to see his face. Let me see his face. I mean, you can see his face.
Come on, Chico.
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 Oh, that is not a little dog. Okay, by any
That's a cute-
standards, that is not.
Oh, he's teeny.
Oh. So that's a really interesting dog. So he's got like the body of sort of like a big dog, and he's got the head of more like not. Like I could see Chihuahua or even like Greyhound in his face. Like
I think the camera's adding like some illusion of his size. Like if you actually look at the Instagram, he's quite teeny. Like I mean, I don't cradle him on a daily basis. He's still 55 pounds, but like he's not a giant dog. He's kind of like an immortal puppy, I think.
He's so cute.
Yeah, he is. Good well, brother. And
thank you for coming on, Lance.
Dogs. We can all agree. Can we all agree that dogs make life better?
Oh,
I mean, that
yes.
we can all agree on. Let's end on that note. Lance of the Serfs, guys, check out the Serfs if you haven't. In the Surf Times on YouTube, great content. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll have a good time. We'll see you around, brother.
Thanks so much.
Anytime, man.
Yeah, I have yet to come across a situation that would not be made better if someone handed me a puppy. Like there is not a situation in the world really where if someone gave you a puppy, it wouldn't be better. Like that's just it's a net positive.
I would definitely agree with that, but of course we don't have all peaches and cream to talk about, and of course even though dogs
I was
can make the
talking about
conversation
the
a lot
puppies.
better. So unfortunately we are going to have to continue talking about some not so good stuff. But for those of you who are here, and if you do enjoy our content and enjoy what we've been preaching, please go to patreon.com/generational change. Again, it is for a lot of the things that you guys support, mutual aid efforts, non-corporate candidates, things that we do locally, community gardens, beach cleanups.
We distributed hygiene. Yeah, we distributed hygiene packs on Saturday. We went around and did a run in Fort Lauderdale and distributed hygiene packs to some of the people that were out there.
So we're really making a collective effort here to make this much more of we're trying to inspire. Let's put it that way. We're trying to inspire.
Transforming politics
into service. So please hit the like button and share. So of course, as you know, the Democratic Party continues to prove how hypocritical and duplicitous they really are.
That's a good word.
And if we are going to talk to anybody who really can speak to this, it is somebody who we believe is a very viable candidate for the U.S. Congress.
Right.
And this happens to be Connecticut's 1st district.
And I want to say something about like when we have people on, we generally we've had so many people on, and the truth is I do forget people and mix up faces and names, and I forget what districts they're in and whatever. But I will say that if we have someone on again, if we bring someone on a second time, that's a sign.
Yeah.
That's a sign that not only do we like them and want to platform them, because we'll platform anyone non-corporate, but it's someone that we think is viable. I hate using that word, but someone that isn't just, oh, they're great and, rainbows and unicorns, but somebody that is.
Bubble them up real nice, Jen. Muad Herzi, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, how's it going, Jen and Peter? Nice to be back.
How's everything going?
Things have been better, but I'm still very, very optimistic because we have the people, and that's what they're afraid of. So I'm feeling good.
Remind us where in Connecticut one is. Remind us where you are, what your areas are, urban, rural, what are they?
Yeah, so our district is centered around Hartford.
Okay.
It includes about 25 towns in the area, but the greater Hartford area is what you should be visualizing on the map.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've actually been there. That city, when I was there, looked like it could use a lot of love. I don't know what it looks like now, but it wasn't some quaint New England thing, I think, that I was imagining when I went there. It was not rough, but it was definitely more of a Midwestern worker vibe than it was of a quaint New England vibe. Yeah,
so there are many rankings out there, but there's rankings that put it as the poorest state capital in the country, Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
This is a state that has been plagued with this issue of segregation. So even though we're a liberal bastion, we still have places in Connecticut where there's extreme wealth and they're essentially closed off because of zoning laws. And so we have some of the richest suburbs in the country right outside of Hartford, where millionaires, executives of health insurance companies live. And then the rest of the service class is stuck to live in Hartford, where they are not given the same opportunities and the same resources to succeed. So Hartford, Connecticut is essentially considered the problem child of the area because nobody wants to invest in it. Nobody wants to allow affordable housing to be built in the rich suburbs. And so it's unfortunate because Hartford has some of the kindest, most generous people that you'll ever meet, and they're never given a fair shake and a fair chance at the road to prosperity.
Sounds very similar to my home state of New Jersey. The only difference, of course, is that Connecticutans are much nicer people than New Jerseyans are. So, at least you got that going in your favor. Unfortunately, as we know, the Democratic Party is less democratic than the Republican Party. Please share with the audience what they are attempting to do to you right now, because obviously they don't think very highly of incumbents being challenged, especially ones that have a chance to win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll just preface this all by saying there are really good people in these Democratic town committees that essentially decide who gets on the ballot. But the party bosses have been really just hindering our campaign from the very start. So throughout the process, we've only received obstacles, and democracy has been kept by these Democratic town committee chairs. So for instance, we've reached out to every Democratic town committee in our district. Many of them never wanted to meet with us. What is more anti-democratic than silencing speech? We have a free speech problem in our state. We had a Democratic town committee endorse the incumbent without even meeting with us, without even giving us the opportunity to hear what we had to say. So you start from there, where these chairs are gatekeeping the members of their district and not letting us have a chance to speak with the members. For the ones who did allow us to speak, we had the opportunity to convince and sway a lot of people. The people that were swayed were kept out of the convention. If they were found not to be supporters of our campaign, several were removed from the convention and were switched with other delegates. There were entire towns that actually selected people outside of the Democratic Party committees just because they were known to be supporters of the incumbent. We had people who, at the convention itself, wanted to vote for me and were told that they could not switch their vote after I gave my speech. The entire process was riddled with unsavory tactics. I was given a few minutes to speak. I followed the rules, stayed within my allotted time. The incumbents folks took nearly 4 times as much time as they were allowed. It was 10 minutes. So, from small things to really important things, there was imbalance and anti-democratic behavior. And all I'm asking for is just play by the rules, set the rules. Nobody likes it when you don't abide by the rules or change the rules in the middle of the game, and give democracy a fair shake. If the incumbent is strong, then he's going to win. If he's weak, then you've only allowed democracy to flourish.
Yeah, that actually sounds worse than what we've had here even. And we have the same kind of shenanigans and nonsense with the state party, with our local DC. They're all just in with the incumbent. And a lot of it is very fear-based. They're very scared of her. I can't speak as to your district. She definitely holds things over them, like support, money, whatever it is she dangles, whatever they're scared of, and they just get in line. And what's interesting is you do not hear about this happening on the right. I've not heard of this happening in the Republican Party here.
The Republican Party has one rule. You can do whatever you want. You can primary whoever you want. If you're not viable, you're not viable. I mean, look, you had former Senator Weld, who tried to primary Trump in 2020, and that obviously failed miserably. But they don't stop you from having inter-party fighting. The one rule they have is that when you get to the general election, you vote against the Democrat, end of discussion.
They fall in line.
And so when the Democratic Party is faced with the same thing, everyone talks about the fact that the Democrats have super delegates and the Republicans don't. Well, it's even worse than that. The party bosses really go to great lengths to protect these incumbents. And that's why you see so much more rotation on the GOP side than on the Democratic side. Representative Larson is almost in his mid-70s, and he's been there for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. And he is as corporate-owned as any representative on Capitol Hill. Could you please share what does Representative Larson's district look like in its current form? Yeah.
So a couple of points I want to hit on before I get to that. So I don't want to let the Republican Party off the hook. They have their share of problems. They have a cult around one person that has been destructive. My job isn't to criticize the Republican Party. I'm talking about my own party. MLK has a very powerful quote, which says, "I criticize America because I love her. I want her to be a moral example for the world." I'm criticizing my party because I want it to be a better and stronger party. I want it to believe in democracy, to live up to its name. And so that's why I'm criticizing my party, not because, I'm antagonistic. I'm just trying to make sure the party allows for debate, allows for dialogue, and allows for the best ideas to win. When it comes to, what's going on in the district here, like you mentioned, Mr. Larson is the longest serving member of Congress without a primary in the country. Since 1998, there's been really no Democratic opposition, and this is a Democratic stronghold. So I don't think that's healthy for democracy. You could be, JFK, FDR, Obama, it doesn't matter. Everyone should have an alternative because that's how we allow voters to have a say in who's governing us. And then also, he's the 5th highest recipient of corporate PAC money out of all the House Democrats. Now, I don't know if there ever was an era where corporate money wasn't toxic or corrosive to our democracy, but where we live in now, the era we live in now, it is the most destructive force in our politics. And so I'm running because I understand the power of corporate money, and I understand that unless we take this stranglehold off our government, we're never going to be able to have the basics that every other industrialized country enjoys, whether it's healthcare, whether it's a roof over your head, or whether it's a livable wage. And so I call out these contrasts because I want to make our party stronger, I want to make our country stronger, and I want to make sure that the electorate is informed about what is happening in our district.
Yeah, see, and if I had my anti-corporate super PAC, I would be able to donate and do my own whole shtick. I could put out beautiful flyers with your beautiful headshot, and you would just be supported by an anti-corporate PAC.
Well,
yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's not balanced. I mean, even if we could have a world where it was balanced to be better, but in my opinion, nobody should be able to write a $2,900 check, a $5,800 check, make it all publicly financed. It should all be on a level playing field. That makes a whole lot more sense. No one wants to be sucking up to big donors to get their money. It should be a system where if you have the best ideas, people will publicly finance you, and we'll all get the same amount of kind of a political currency as everyone else. And that's a much more meritorious system that will actually give us a better government and better representation.
So where does this put you regarding the primary in August? Is this is there any setback as of right now, or is this just political posturing on the party's part? Ultimately, is this going to affect your campaign in any way?
Yeah. So there are only 2 routes onto the ballot in Connecticut. There's this convention process, and then there's the petitioning process. We invested time to work with delegates and show them our vision, and many of them, like I said, bought in and wanted to vote for us, but were not allowed to go to the convention. And so it continuously became harder and harder to make it through the convention process. And ultimately, we did not get the percentage of the vote that we needed. So now we have the petition process remaining. This is the hardest state to get on the ballot through the petitioning process. Just the number of votes required is higher than any state. For instance, New York requires, I believe, about 1,000. We have about 4,000 required in 40 days. So we have the highest number of signatures needed per day. We also have some of the most stringent requirements around who can sign, who can collect, the standard of having every page be for a certain town. And we have a litany of towns here. And you just kind of go through all the regulations and steps, and it's a completely cumbersome process. But ultimately, I never expected to be given a red carpet introduction to the party. So I knew we would likely have to go through this process. So we've been building out our campaign to have the resources, to have the staff, to have the volunteers to be able to pull this off. But I don't want to, underestimate how hard this is. This is the hardest state to get on the ballot. And so this is a form of candidate suppression. It's not as though this is an easy thing to achieve. And the Democratic Party leaders knew that. And this is the system that's been designed. And so I understand what they're trying to do, but I'm confident that we will get it done. People here are overwhelmingly on our side. They might not know, to be quite honest, because I don't think they've knocked on doors for quite some time. But we know that because I was literally just talking to voters for probably 6 or 7 hours today, knocking on their doors. Overwhelmingly, people are supportive of 2 main things: getting corporate money out of politics and new blood. That is what the electorate wants beside anything else. They are sick and tired of the same old leadership, whether it's Mr. Larson or just the fact that most of Congress has been there for decades now. And so I think we'll get the job done, and we'll continue moving forward to the primary date, and we'll have a continue this dialogue and debate of ideas.
When is the deadline for when you have to be qualified?
So we have until June 7th, I believe. So a little less than 30 days now. Remaining. And so it's definitely crunch time. And so if any of your followers or viewers are in Connecticut, you have to be a registered Democrat to support us, to collect these signatures. So that's the only requirement. And that if you meet that requirement, definitely reach out. I believe that you probably put up the social media handles. Check out our social media. You can DM us to help out. We're taking volunteers anytime. We're out there from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. We're knocking on doors. We have volunteers out there. And so if anyone wants to help out, we would appreciate your support. If you want to stop by and give us a signature, just DM us again, and we'll get this done.
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged. That's what I try to tell people all the time. The truth is, it is hard. It's made this way because the system is corrupted and rigged, and they they don't have any merit to stand on. Unfortunately, Representative Larson is very similar to our Representative Wasserman Schultz and a lot of others that are out there that are basically, they've had a very lucrative career for a very long time. They've had it for decades, but over the last 5-6 years, the dialogue has changed, and they know that their hill of crap they can't sell anymore. And so now they just go to suppressive tactics in order to make it so.
Can I just say one quickly? It's not supposed to be a lucrative career. That's the whole point. It should not even be a lucrative career. Like you say it like matter of fact, because it is, but that's the whole problem.
Yeah.
It's definitely a huge part of the problem that we face today. And we need a more cohesive movement when it comes to non-corporate populist politics. We are not a movement that is a well-oiled machine the way we need to be, but we need to be helping each other out. And so when someone says, I'm fed up with electoral politics, well, how do you think the people in Connecticut's 1st Congressional District feel? They don't even know another option. They don't even know that it exists because, again, the Democratic Party has a complete stranglehold over the entire state. So they make the rules, and the rules are not favorable to working people. So that is the signature, issue that obviously we need to be fighting for. And as Jen said, Muad, I'm very familiar with Hartford. It does need help. And, what you're trying to provide is an absolute good, and we'll do everything we can to help. And if for whatever reason they're able to pick you off this time, I know you'll be coming back stronger than ever the next time around.
Yeah.
So, just rest assured we have your back, and, we really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you both. I appreciate the time to speak to your viewers. And I'm optimistic. Like I said, we will get this done. And getting this done, honestly, will be historic in itself. Nobody has ever done this in Connecticut history, has gotten on the ballot through petitioning for a congressional race here in Connecticut. So this will be the first time. And nobody's ever won a primary against an incumbent in Connecticut as well. This is called the land of steady habits. So we are truly trying to shake up kind of the epicenter of neoliberalism. Connecticut is known for its neoliberal kind of tendencies and behaviors. But I'm confident that people are ready for a change, and that's ultimately what matters most. And so we'll get this done.
You make excellent points because, again, I'm very familiar with Connecticut. It's not just Hartford, it's New Haven, it's Bridgeport. They all have the same problem. The wealthiest of the wealthy people in the United States live in various suburbs between Boston, New York City, and Philadelphia. And what ends up happening along that I-95 route, if you will, you see the downfall of society in so many ways because these cities are so undercared for, and the corruption in politics begets that. Somebody who feels that they have to be sitting in a congressional seat for 25 years, that's a problem. It's a big problem, and it's got to change. And thankfully, I think there's a lot more like-minded people today. Even if it isn't happening overnight, there's a lot more people who are looking at it saying, yeah, it's time that this changes. And obviously the fight that you're putting up is absolutely fantastic. You are a tremendous candidate. And, we don't say that lightly.
No. And I have a question for you. When this is done and you're done like stressing out 24/7, regardless of whatever happens,
yeah,
would you possibly be interested in contributing your story of what this was like to a book that we're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's been one of the most frustrating things is this black box of running for office. It's super hard to understand how to do it, what to do. And I think progressives, maybe just really anyone, we should make this public information. There's no reason for this. I want as many people to know my experience, what I had to do to get to this point, what fundraising looks like, what building a team looks like. That way it's more accessible for all Americans, for anyone who wants to run for office. So
that's awesome. Okay, so we will be hitting you up when you're done with this.
Please do, Jen.
Muad Herzi, guys, go to herzi.com, follow Phone Bank, Text Bank. Remember, if there is anything that if you want to talk about the importance of phone and text banking right now, phone and text bank to make sure that he gets enough ballot signatures. You can phone and text bank to let people know to get on the ballot. Just need to let via email or text, people will, supporters of his campaign will come, will get the ballot signed at your house. You have multiple people living in the house, you get multiple signatures.
And I say, if nothing else, follow and forward, because you might not have money and you might not live there, but somewhere, somehow on your social media chain, there might be. So, that's not everybody can give money, but definitely give your time and attention.
Damn right. We will, and hope you guys will too. Muad Herzi, thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck the rest of the way, brother.
Thank you, Jen and Peter. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. You can imagine the hell he must be going through.
Oh, that's worse than us. But you know, the one thing about Florida, while it is expensive to get on the ballot, you have two options. You have two viable options. But sitting here talking to him, I had this thought, like, I'm going to ask a bunch of these people that have been running to write their stories and like
maybe
advice.
That's a big part of the book. Could be, you know, just basically sharing that whole sentiment of, if you really want to know just how corrupt the Democratic Party really is, check out local and state politics and see how they hamstring people
I'm thinking,
trying to run.
Let's talk to candidates that have run for different things. Like, he would be an excellent person to write the story about what he's dealing with just getting on the ballot. Like, just that vignette of, you know, dealing with the party in that capacity. And then you have another candidate that can talk to you about, that could write about what they went through in terms of endorsements or what, you know what I mean? So like, it might be, I'm sort of, you know, and I was writing a lot for today. I was writing, you know, I'm really wanting to do this because I think that people should know what's going on. Yeah. There are a lot of people that I know, like a lot of what I guess Lance would call normie Dems, that mean well, that they wouldn't want the system to be this filthy corrupt. If they knew, like, people really don't realize what it's like to get on a ballot and how hard it is to be a candidate when there's an incumbent in the Democratic Party. It's really, it's like Sisyphus, people. It's absurd, and it shouldn't be that way. Like, that's a problem within the party, and just that is something that is so undemocratic and that really could be done differently. You know, we're not talking about national policy. We're talking about just local DNCs or DECs and the state parties actually allowing challenges. And I think the more we call that out, by the way, they lose numbers on a daily basis, but the more we call them out on this, I do think we can change the party enough to where you can have at least a challenge.
But the thing that's so frustrating is that you see so many people, and again, there are so many privileged liberals within the Democratic Party ranks that have a huge voice. So ultimately what ends up happening is their attitude is not that we should be working towards what's in the best interest of the voter. It's no, voters, shut up and just listen to our leaders, because they know what's best for us, and they will convince us that, you know, it could always be worse. Like, that's their attitude. And again, I can tell that Muad is very like, I could just tell, like, this has like really affected him. And, you know, as
well it should.
Yeah.
But, and I would also like to point out about him that he is not an outsider.
No.
He was a Senate staffer.
Yeah, he was.
For an inside Democrat.
Which is why he's dangerous. That's the point.
Yeah.
He is dangerous.
So he's not some, you know, freak out of left field that's just coming all in there. He was part of their infrastructure to some extent. I mean, if he was a staffer for which senator did he staff for? Do you remember?
Chris Murphy.
Okay. So it's like, this is not somebody coming from the outside. And even if it were, the party needs to accept challenges. It does if it has any chance of survival, because more and more people are leaving. It's very frustrating. I can't even begin to explain how hard it is to run against the sitting Democratic incumbent. It's like running into a brick wall.
You're in his district and zero name recognition, and you're saying that Larson is based. Well, listen, Roller Dragon.
We'll have to agree to disagree.
You're doing a really good troll job today, my friend. I will tell you that.
Let me tell you something. With the exception of Baby Bernie, nobody that has been sitting in Congress that long is based. They're just not.
No, not when you're that corporate bought. But,
no,
you know, again,
you're just not based.
Why would you want the Democratic
Nobody
process?
That age, quite honestly, should
why
be based.
Why would anybody want the Democratic process? You know?
Well, really I mean, but when you communicate to voters and they find out, they don't like that. You know, they just don't realize it's happening, and that's part of the suppression.
Yeah, but there's also the problem that you run into with the voters who are, say, you know, you have somebody like, you know, Debbie, for example, and you approach some of those, you know, older ladies in particular who are like, oh no, that's Debbie's seat. You're not supposed to do that. And it's like, who died and made this I call it a monarchy. Yeah, monarchy.
They think it's a monarchy. And the crazy part, and we've talked about this down here in politics, people that sit in their seats for forever, they actually feel entitled to choose the next person to follow them. They actually feel like it is their job to bequeath their seat to whom they choose.
Mac, whether or not you agree with Andrew Yang, and a lot of people don't, the one thing you can absolutely say that he is doing correctly, if anyone wants a third-party movement to really grow in the United States, you need ranked choice voting and open primaries. And any of the states that are fighting for that right now, that's the policy you need to get behind.
Yeah.
So for any of the states, for example, if you really want to push for a third-party uprising in the United States, look at Maine, look at Alaska.
You need to get ranked choice voting in your state.
Yeah, and even if you have jungle primaries, like they have in Louisiana and California, and I believe Washington State, that to me is really, that's where it begins. You know, we've had conversations with many people who talk about the fact that when you have a first past the post blockade, if you will, you know, that to me really says everything. Because you cannot win with no infrastructure. At least when you have the opportunity to, yeah, well, you're definitely trolling now, Ruler. we won't.
We just like to work with people that use reason and good judgment, and it doesn't have to be we agree with them and everything. But oh, Scat, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate our trolls. We appreciate everybody who comes.
I agree, Paul. It's like, we are working within the confines of electoral politics. And if somebody is going to even just be great on one issue more than the other person, let's go with that. Like let's work with what we have to some extent. And that's the problem, is everything is all or nothing on the left.
Well, yeah, and we really don't have a lot, but what we're working with based on these relationships, I think, are very important.
Yeah.
I would hope that anybody who cares about these things would have Muad on their podcast and say, hey, the Democratic Party of Connecticut literally is a fascist party.
They are. That's being fascist.
That is fascist. There is no option. We will give you an option and you'll like it, and that's it. So that's a big problem.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to have him write his story about what went on within his state and local party, because that's really bad. That's really bad. And then, so they have to collect 4,000 signatures in 40 days.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, they're not going to do it. Chris, agreed. Andrew is cringe at times, but you know what? Andrew at least has some good ideas, and he's at least trying something, because there's a lot of people not trying anything.
He's just a regular guy and sometimes just says the wrong thing. But the reality about him is he is somebody that would surround himself with extremely smart people. And what I really like about Andrew is he doesn't have the need to be the smartest person in the room.
Nope.
And he uses good judgment.
And he doesn't have ego.
No.
That's another thing that
that's the thing. So he's somebody that would be so he'd be good because he would surround himself with really smart people and he uses good judgment.
Yeah.
And really, that's what I'm looking for in somebody who's in a leadership position.
The biggest issue that I have with Andrew is the fact that he's comfortable, as it stands today, with corporate special interest money in politics. Now, it may be because he sees his cause being fought for, God, I'm trying to have a thought here, Jen. Don't distract me. Andrew made a lot of mistakes. And he, unfortunately, when he ran for mayor in particular, employed a very lucrative consulting firm. Lord knows how much money was probably wasted on that.
Exactly. That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
He's not entrenched. So you might not, he's like any person. You will agree with him some stuff. You won't agree with him some stuff. But he's not dictatorial. He's not authoritarian. He's not on a mission to convert people. He's just wanting to help.
And I'm telling you guys right now, I don't know this on authority. We're friendly with Andrew, but we didn't really get to the nitty gritty on this. I guarantee you that it would not be shocking in the least if Andrew really did want to have a cabinet position in Biden's administration, especially on the economics front, and they didn't offer it to him. Mm-hmm. And that's why he decided to run for mayor. He really did want to have an influence within that administration. Listen, we have a lot of disagreements with Senator Warren, but I am sure that was a huge impetus on her part, was to make sure that she had an influence on the economic side as well. But we have all seen what a pretty colossal disaster the Biden administration really has been. And as a result of that, you're now seeing just sort of everything all fall apart. Paul, very interesting point. One of Andrew's closest confidants, as you may know, is Scott Stanton's, and he wrote a very interesting op-ed about how both MMT principles, such as guaranteed jobs guarantee, along with the universal basic income, could actually work. So even having that conversation is important.
Yeah, isn't it? Can't we just talk about it? Can't we just bring a bunch of really smart people in a room and let them really come to an agreement as to the best way to help the most people? Why is this so complicated?
Chris, I agree and I disagree. I think that there were definite things that Andrew did wrong. His complete gaffe regarding Israel-Palestine really hurt him with progressives because they just went completely ham. Listen, they own it, and we've said it many times. The over-woke left New Yorkers that decided that it was a better idea to rank Eric Adams instead of Andrew Yang, they can own that mayoral seat now. But ultimately, he did make mistakes. You're right. Matt, we do not think that's not in any way, shape, or form what we think Tulsi is going to do. I think all of her moves are indicative of somebody who's angling to be more than likely Ron DeSantis's VP.
She's just too all over the place. Like she's just been too all over the place that it's hard to respect. It's hard to respect someone that's just, I mean, we're having that with one of the people running for governor here. You know, it's like he's been a Democrat, he's been a Republican, he's been everything.
By the way,
no credibility.
That field just got a hell of a lot thinner. Annette Taddeo is dropping out of the gubernatorial race, which is not unexpected. And now she is running for the U.S. Congress seat 27 against Maria Elvira Salazar. But of course, she has
Annette Taddeo got in that race as well. Isn't Ken Russell in that too?
Ken is in that race, as is Angel Montalvo. So a lot of people are now chasing this congressional seat. I got to tell you,
it's gross.
Yeah, it's not.
It's tacky.
I don't see Maria losing her seat.
And not only that, but let me just shout out to Angel Montalvo, who is a friend. He's a personal friend. He's a candidate friend. And he is someone that I feared this would happen to. But he has been in that district on the ground organizing for the benefit. He is a working person for working people. And this is somebody who walks the walk. And now I look at what they're going to do, and they're going to like swallow him up. But just be aware that there actually is a true, I hate to use the term progressive, a true non-corporate, really cares about people person in that race. And it's Angel Montalvo. And just be aware of that.
Got to get him on the city council first. Maxwell, and if you want to say that Andrew is neoliberal because he's corporate friendly, that's fine. But you know what? At least he's got some good arrows in his quiver. He's not completely devoid of being somebody.
And he's not, when you say neoliberal, I think, it depending on his upbringing and stuff and stances on policies and that, but he's not authoritarian. He's not like somebody like Hillary Clinton who would come in my way or the highway. He's not somebody that would dictate what we should be doing as much as suggesting.
Now, I completely agree with you, Chris, that the biggest issue with Yang's campaign, he got in bed with, I don't remember, I'm not remembering the name of the organization.
Another good cautionary tale.
Yeah, that is it. He spent untold sums of money, potentially in the hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of only a few months on some type of an organization, which, mind you, we were trying to get Andrew on the podcast repeatedly over the course of the race, and he wanted to come on, but he ultimately deferred to them, and they basically blackballed us. So that's his mistake. And if he runs again, he should know that he's got to have more faith in the fact that he's got good ideas. Andrew is very charismatic.
And by the way, let us not forget the power of the Yang Gang, because, it's like, and this is what we talk about, what Andrew Gillum did, in that when you step away from your original crew that sort of backed you and was like really propping you up, and you step away and take the advice from someone who isn't part of that, you're basically contradicting the premise of your own campaign. The concept is to be outside the box. So why would you take advice and have consultants from inside the box?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. But what happens is, and I see this, there's this sort of thought that because the establishment is the establishment, that they must have good ideas. Well, no, that's not what that means. Those are completely unrelated things. And what's happening is, in some cases, they're actually sabotaging actual populist campaigns, if not just completely mismanaging. And they do it because, one, the 90s called and wants their politics back. And it's just, that's where Andrew went wrong. I mean, if you're going to take your out of the box concept and put it in the hands of someone who is working so within the box, it's not going to, it defeats the purpose. But we think that they must know better. They don't.
I think Yang is, Matt, I would say that Yang is very good in small crowds. He's not somebody who is gonna, he's not a Nina Turner in front of like 1,000, 2,000 people. That's not his jam. But I think he definitely has a place in what we're trying to do. And everyone should acknowledge the fact that of all the people that are making the push for a third party movement right now, he's the only one talking about that we need to build a third party infrastructure.
Local, too.
That's what you need. You need ranked choice voting and open primaries. And as you have said many times before, and it's true, and enough history has come and gone where people have recognized that the Green Party is too niche, it is way too outdated, it doesn't have any juice. People realize that they have made countless mistakes. And for anyone who wants to say, well, that's going to happen anyway because they're not part of the, they're not part of the system, they're not part of the two-party duopoly. Yeah, we get that, but it's never been a party who is actively pushed. When they had their best run with Ralph Nader and candidates of that magnitude, where they could have been pushing for ranked choice voting and open primaries, they never did. And if that's not bad enough, the nail in the coffin for me regarding the Green Party was when they had an opportunity to get Jesse the Body Ventura on their ballot as the president in 2020, and instead went with Howie Hawkins.
Yeah, and when I say niche, I agree with their platform. Like, their platform is like, I have no problem with any of their platform, but their branding is more what I'm talking about. Like, I just think it's even the name, the Green Party. It's just like, to somebody who's, in a independent red place, that might be just a bunch of long-haired hippies. I don't know. Like, I'm just saying it's not marketed well. And I'm going to answer you because I saw that. No, I'm not against BDS. I don't participate. I don't do that. Like, I don't purposefully.
You do you. Whatever you want to support.
Yeah, but I have no problem with the BDS movement. I support it as a nonviolent movement. My concern with me not participating in terms of purposefully not buying things or sanctioning, not that I have any power, but I always am concerned that who it's affecting. But as far as anybody who supports it being silenced, or teachers having to say that they don't support that, I am vehemently opposed to all of that. I think you should be able to BDS your little heart's content if that's what you want to do. So
I absolutely agree
there
with
you go.
What the Alaska Green Party did. I think that is absolutely what you should do. But unfortunately, there is, it's a rudderless ship in many ways. And so that's what we're trying to solve here. That's why we have these conversations.
Jesse Ventura is my big get, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody has any connection to Jesse? I'd love. I want him. I'd love it. No, that sounds more like Arnold.
No. What if
I can't
come on the podcast?
No, but I love Jesse Ventura. I liked him when I was a kid, like younger, and my dad and I would go to like the wrestling stuff. Like, he was great.
Let's put it this way: if Jesse Ventura was the candidate of the Green Party in the absolutely chaotic 2020 presidential election season. Oh, he had 5% of the vote written all.
I think so too. And the thing about him is he's been so successful as an independent. And by the way, I'll shout out his book. He's written lots of books, but the one that I like the most was Democrips and Republicans. And
I need to read that.
It's great. And it really talks about how that these two parties are gangs. They're like gangs, and it's really demented. But anyway, I love Jesse, so I'd love to have him on the show.
Yeah.
But the Greens are it's too niche, and they don't market well, and they're just not. It doesn't reach enough people.
Shout out to Corey Springer up in Minnesota, and yes, Jesse Ventura was an independent governor.
Okay, so I got a message the other day from a law school, like an old law school friend that I haven't spoken to on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, I got a message. And he is actually, there's a new district in Minnesota, which is your congressional district 1, Minnesota. And his name is James Rainwater. So shout out to James. And he is running in a very big field in the Democratic Party, but it's a +R. So, but I'm just giving a shout out to him. But if you're in Minnesota 1, check out James Rainwater.
Yeah.
There you go. That's my plug.
So we appreciate you guys.
What do we have coming up?
Do not have anything planned for Monday as of yet, but
I'm leaving town this weekend.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to see the Piano Man at the Garden on my birthday.
So you're going to be coming on remotely. Is that what you're saying?
No.
You'll be back by Monday?
Yeah, I'm coming back Sunday.
Oh, I don't know.
My birthday Saturday, and I'm meeting my son in the city for my birthday, and we're going to see Billy Joel at the Garden. Now, I've seen Billy Joel numerous times. I mean, numerous times, but never there. And I've heard that it's a certain kind of special to see him there. So I'm excited about that.
Speaking of, and the last thing before we go, guys, speaking of BDS, you can stop with the whole BDS thing at this point, because I will tell you right now that with what just happened with that assassination of the journalist, that was without question the Israeli military who assassinated that journalist.
Wearing a journalist press vest.
This journalist evidently was somebody who was covering the crimes of the Israeli army against the Palestinians.
Well, right. She's actually was the first, I believe, female reporter on the ground for Al Jazeera in that area. Mm-hmm. And this is someone who's been reporting for Al Jazeera, has been press since, I believe they said like 98.
They're not going to be able to talk their way out of this one. And the talks for BDS are going to get very, very strong.
Like she was my age and had been reporting for Al Jazeera since she was 25 years old.
Yeah.
And this is like, and we could talk,
watch what you say.
No. I will always say what I mean about BDS. I don't have a problem with it. I personally don't boycott, divest, or sanction.
If somebody else wants to, that's their business.
I don't, right. And I certainly support their right to talk about it. I support that. But, and if you were to tell me specifically, okay, we are sanctioning these specific businesses in the West Bank that are on occupied land, and these specific businesses, then I wouldn't even have a problem with that necessarily. I'm concerned as to who's being sanctioned and what working class people.
It's always working people that
right. And so what working class people are being affected. So that's sort of my concern with it. But I have no problem with you BDSing.
With that said, we appreciate you guys.
Or what's the other thing? BDSM. Go BDSMing. I'm in favor of whatever consenting adults want to do with their own selves. And that includes how they spend their dollars. So,
Oh, Lord. Well, we sympathize with you, Corey. Guys, we really appreciate all of your support. And of course, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, make sure you comment once this is off the air. And if you could become a patron, we would really appreciate it. Patreon.com/generational change. That's the banner right over here.
Wait, 7 is Ilhan, right? Isn't 7 Ilhan? No. Okay.
No. And so with that said, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for the birthday wishes to Jen.
Oh, thank you. I don't even normally I really don't. It's not a big deal to me other than I'm getting to go see the Piano Man.
Yeah, there you go. Sing us a song, Piano Man.
It never disappoints. I have to tell you, I've made eye contact with him twice. And I will say that the last time I saw him was here on New Year's Eve a few years ago, and my family was on a cruise, and I went by myself because it's really close to my house, and I got a ticket last minute, and I just went to the show, and I was kind of in sort of obstructed view, which I don't care. I've seen him so many times. So I'm sort of obstructed view right where he walks out. And his little staff was down there and everybody's down there, and they were getting ready to toast at midnight and having champagne. And I saw one guy go to another guy like this, and the guy went like that. And so I went like this to them. They came over to me and I shared my weed with them. This was Billy's tour, his roadies and stuff. And so then they went, had New Year's, whatever, and they came back and I got a staff tee. They threw a staff t-shirt up at me. And so
I should have allowed you to come back and celebrate.
Well, I don't, whatever. But so anyway, that was the best. But whenever I've seen him, I'll always yell, "Hey, Billy." And I've eye contact twice, just saying.
Well, we all have our brushes. We all have our brushes with greatness. So thank you guys. Appreciate you all. We'll see you Monday.